Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode. I'm absolutely thrilled today to have with me John Kormanik. John, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Tom. I appreciate you.
John, you have one of the most interesting titles I have recently seen in a book, and that title is Break the Law: Five Lies Lawyers Tell Themselves and What to Do Instead. With that, could you tell us a little bit about your professional background?
You bet. Practiced law for 25 years, owned and led a successful law firm for 16. For the vast majority of those 16 years, I practiced criminal defense in Boise, Idaho, both federal and state, and everything from DUI to white collar crime to death penalty work in Idaho. I loved being a lawyer. I didn't leave the law because I was burnt out or stressed out. I left the law because I wanted to serve others. And that's the genesis of the book.
My experience was a little bit different. I completely burned out as a trial lawyer, went into the corporate world, started off doing contracts in the energy space. I lived at the time in Houston, and I always practiced in the energy area. First as a trial lawyer, then as a corporate lawyer. That led me to a general counsel role. That led me, in that role, worked for a company which in 2007 had the largest fine ever issued under a law called the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Under that law, I learned about compliance. I went into compliance and started podcasting as a result of marketing for marketing. Started podcasting in 2012, and here I am today podcasting. And although I still practice law, I don't say it very often and I don't say it very loudly for fear someone might send me some work. But you're also an author. So I always love to talk to other authors about your writing style. And so, for instance, I'm a morning person. I write in the morning. Do you write in the morning? Do you write when the spirit moves you? Do you outline extensively? Do you put it together in your head? How do you sit down or how did you sit down and write Break the Law?
Yeah. Break the Law was a unique journey, right? As a trial lawyer, I also practiced in the appellate space. So I'm used to writing and I think I'm a pretty decent writer. But Break the Law was different because it came from my heart. I did outline it quite a bit. I wouldn't say extensively because Tom, is any trial lawyer worth their salt doesn't get locked in to an outline. They will pay attention to what's going on. So I outlined it. I too am a morning person. I have a kind of a daily, not kind of a daily, it's a daily habit of morning pages that I just free write in a journal. And then I was able to step right into my writing. I will tell you the hardest part of writing Break the Law was quite honestly my self doubt. Would anybody read it? Would anybody care? And when we're alone with our thoughts, that gremlin, that person, I named mine Zeke, Zeke would rear his ugly head and say, dude, nobody's going to read this. And the thing that kept me coming back was, what if someone does? What if just one person does? That's what drove me to complete the book and publish it.
So I will say some of the key themes you have in this book, particularly the lives, were lies I lived by for a
Mm,
long time.
yeah.
And I counted every billable hour. We always kept score that way. The notion of Friday being 2 more working days till Monday was a part of my full-time lexicon. Even before the advent of cell phones, I was always available to my clients. So maybe I can kind of go through some of these and see why you say these are self-limiting for lawyers, how it led to people like me really burning out, and what you might be able to do to correct those. So the lie number one, you have to grind all the time to be successful.
Yeah. We think that in order for it to be work, it has to feel heavy. It has to feel like we're grinding, like we're doing this thing that is heavy. And if you are able to step out of that space and do what you like, hopefully love most of the time, it's not going to feel like a grind. You don't have to grind to be successful. I'm working with a client right now. She's moving into the CEO space of a law firm that she built from the ground up. She is employee number one. And she has come to realize that the hardest work that she does isn't the grinding, it's the thinking. And so you have to grind all the time to be successful, is line number one, because we think that work needs to feel like work when in fact it ought not.
So lie number 2 seems to me to equate to something like being busy is not necessarily being productive. What does that mean?
Yeah. So, line number two, if I'm not busy, I'm lazy. This is the lie that we buy into. When we look at our calendar and there's blank space, it makes us really uncomfortable. And I am a true believer in, if you are busy, you're lazy. And here's what I mean by that. If you're busy, meaning you're doing things that potentially you ought not be doing, you are filling your calendar with things just to make you feel good, to feel productive, you're not making the really hard decisions on the front end of what you ought to be doing and what you ought not be doing. I read an article not too long ago, and it was about Mark Zuckerberg and his private jet. The article had to do with carbon footprint, but that's not what I took away from the article. What I took away from the article was this concept that Facebook, Meta, believes that Mark Zuckerberg's time is worth $400,000 a minute. $400,000 a minute. That guy is not busy. He's doing the things that only he can do at a really high level. So that's the opposite of busyness. And I think lawyers and actually all high functioning professionals, all type A's like me, are much better served thinking about what they're about to do and whether they ought to do it or not on the front end, as opposed to having this badge of honor that I build all this time. That's great, I guess. Was it work that only you could do, or was your team, did you not leverage your team in the appropriate way?
One of the things I always enjoyed about the practice of law was writing articles, whether they be legal article, whether it be an article for a bar journal, whether it could be an article for another journal. And I would write in topics as broad as contracts, indemnities, tax, human resources, anything that interested me. And that served me in a couple of different ways. One is it got my name out a little bit broader. Two, showed thought leadership. But the thing that I've now understood that it brought the biggest benefit to me was it either enabled or forced me to become a subject matter expert, even a very narrow field for a short period of time. And so it's how I was able to continuously learn, even though I thought I had to stay on the clock all of the time. Do lawyers or do you counsel lawyers along those lines for professional development as well?
Yeah, 100%. Find something that you're very interested in. I will talk with lawyers all the time. I'll talk with anybody who will listen to me, quite honestly. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there that says you should do these things. You should do the things that you want to do that will move your ball forward. And if that is writing, then write. You ought to do that. If it is recording 90-second videos to share some knowledge and some information, you ought to do that. Again, it shouldn't feel like a grind. It should feel like almost like it's not work, and it will move you forward in ways that you would never expect. I just read an article, Will I Am, the musician and entrepreneur and thought leader. He talked about this concept of balance, work life balance. And he said, for me, it doesn't exist because I find something that I'm passionate about and I'm all in. And so when I'm all in, I'm all in. And when have exhausted it, then I'm out of it. And that's okay. That's more of a system that will serve over the long haul, as opposed to doing things that you think you ought to do that don't excite you and have the potential to burn you out.
I'm going to take number 4 for the next one because I want to save number 4 in your list for the final talk or discussion point on these areas. But number 5 is asking for help is weakness. Is that unique to lawyers? Is it unique to male lawyers? Is it just unique to males?
That's a great question. I think it's more, I wouldn't say unique. I would say it's a more prevalent concept in males that I have come across, just, and this is just based on experience, right? This may not be you. As I look around the world and I look at the people that I talk with and come in contact with, I think it's more prevalent in males, number one. I think for lawyers, it really is a thing. And here's what I mean by that. We believe that we have to have the answers. People hire us to have the answers, number one. Number two, if we show any sort of weakness in litigation or with opposing counsel or anyone else, we think that it's going to be taken advantage of. It. Oftentimes it is. Right? Look, I practice law. I get it. I know. And so we have this, as I've begun to think about it, we put this armor on where we have to be all seeing and all knowing and be able to do all things. And asking anyone for help, we then equate to weakness. When in fact, if you look around the world at any CEO of any Fortune 100 company that you can name, or any professional athlete who is at the top of their game, or any Olympic athlete who is at the top of their game, they all have someone on their team that they can take the armor off with, that they can get into a space and be real. Lawyers, because we have this concept that if we ask for help, it's a weakness, it somehow shows weakness. We ignore the reality of the world and we don't serve ourselves and our clients and our staffs and our families and our communities in the way that we otherwise could have if we were to put that down. So, I think it's a thing for men just because of how we're raised. That's changing. Generationally, that's changing. I think it's definitely a thing for lawyers because that's how we're trained.
So I always had the vision of myself as a trial lawyer as the king's champion, as the single combat warrior who sauntered in with his full armor, or in Texas, we would say, one riot, one ranger.
There you go.
And doing the work on my own was really a point of pride for me because I thought I was supposed to be all of those things. Can we detrain lawyers to think they have to be that single combat warrior?
I think we can carefully. And here's what I mean by that. Almost all attorneys, and I do not paint with a broad brush very often, but I will say almost all attorneys are driven in one way or another. If they weren't driven, they wouldn't have gone to law school. They wouldn't have passed the bar exam. In my case, 2 bar exams. California and Idaho, back to back. Do not recommend. But we would not be able to persevere. And so when we can show lawyers that in fact the end product is improved by having a coach, having someone on your team, having someone by your side, if we can demonstrate improvement to the end product, then they're going to want it. That's kind of who they are at their base, I think.
Let's get to your lie number 4. I'm going to take it as number 5, which is money will make you happy.
Yeah.
In the great state of Texas, we took great pride in always talking about money. Sometimes we'd say, oh, it's just the way I keep it score. Sometimes we'd say, I'm very money driven. I was always on the defense side, so I did civil work, so I was always paying money, but it really didn't matter to me because I always considered plaintiffs' lawyers in a different category than what I was making because I was slow and steady sort of thing. But why is the pursuit of money such a misplaced priority in your opinion?
For so many reasons. At its base, the time worn saying, you can't take it with you. I talk with lawyers all the time about legacy, and some of them gravitate automatically to name on a building at a law school or that type of thing. But when you step back and you do any reading or any research about the regrets that people have when they get to the end of their lives, and by the way, all of us get to the end, it is never, ever about money. It's just not that thing. Money is a scoreboard. I'm guilty. I'm as guilty as anyone else in the past of trying to keep up with the Joneses, for sure. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. The thing about money is it enables you to experience life in a different way. If we are driven to accumulate money like that, then that's fine. But if we're just driven by money itself, we're number one, we're missing the point of life, I think. Number two, it's a constantly moving goalpost. Anytime someone says, I will be happy when my bank account is X, I can almost guarantee you, again, I don't paint with a broad brush and I don't do absolutes. I practiced criminal defense for many years. I know not to do absolutes, but I am willing to guess that when they get there, they're still not happy. They're going to move the goalpost. We continuously move the goalpost when it comes to money because we think when I have this amount, I will be happy. You will be happy. And then you will have that amount more than you thought, is how I view it. And I think that's how it works at the end of the day.
So you mentioned legacy. I'm at the age where I'm thinking about those sorts of things. I might broaden it out a little bit more, and maybe this encompasses what you mean by legacy, but paying it forward or sending the elevator back down or just helping out people because there was somebody who helped me when I started. Is that a conversation that the people you talk to understand and that I see? Now, I'm a university kid's son. So putting a name on a building is a big deal to me. And I see that as legacy. And I see it as an appropriate way for legacy to exist. But there's, as I just mentioned, numerous ways to think about it. How do those conversations go with the people you talk to about that?
Yeah, they're interesting and they're energetic and they are an opportunity. Look, I am not the guy who's going to say, go up to the top of the mountain, contemplate your navel, and don't concern yourself with cat. That's not who I am. I am someone who understands the value of money and what it can provide. Here's the legacy conversation that I have, and it goes along with putting your name on a building, sending the elevator back down. It goes along with all of those concepts. You,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
is that my internet?
I'm not quite sure what it's looking good to me.
Okay, we'll wait.
Nope. Go ahead.
Okay, so here's how I have the legacy conversation. Legacy is the thing that you can't leave in your will. Legacy is how you act and how people feel about you. It's the thing that they say about you when you're gone, and they don't have to be nice to you. Right? When we're at the memorial service, I used to have this conversation about a memorial service. What do you want people to say about you in a memorial service? Societally, we have built this structure where we don't talk ill of the dead at the memorial service. But it's what do you want people to feel about you? He was a nice guy. He was difficult. She was this. She was that. That, I think, is the lasting legacy that all of us have the opportunity, whether you are a solo practitioner out there doing the work and getting by, or you're the multi-million dollar Gulf Stream owning personal injury lawyer. We could all leave people with the feeling that we want to leave them with. We have that ability if we slow down and we stop and we think about it. We have that for ourselves. And that's what I mean by legacy. It could be big, name on a building, it could be small. I rescued a dog the other day and that type of thing, as long as it's intentional, because you're leaving it no matter what do you want to leave.
Let me change the focus just a little bit to your coaching because you have a great phrase I want to explore with you, and it's called leadership alchemy. What do you mean by that? And how do you apply that in your coaching strategies?
Yeah. So, leadership alchemy. Almost every single lawyer who comes to me for a checklist or a method, or you're laughing. Good, John, just give me the checklist. I'm good at checklists. I can do these things.
Yep.
Yeah, you can. And we're recording this conversation in 2025. And I will tell you that anytime someone says, John, I don't know what to do, my initial reaction is that's not an accurate statement, because in 2025 and beyond, and for many years before, all you have to do is do an internet query, and you can have the top 5 things that in-house counsel should do to create good relationships in their company. You can do that. You're not doing it. So it's not the lack of knowledge oftentimes. That's the easy way out. What it is, it's the gap between knowing what to do and acting. That's where the alchemy occurs. We, again, come in, we take off our armor. With my clients, I co-create a space. Some call it a dojo, some call it a sandbox. It all depends on the day sometimes and how feisty they're feeling. But we come in and we work in the space. Why aren't you moving forward? Why aren't you acting? I'll give you a perfect example. A client of mine was settling for some optimal behavior in his firm. And he was settling for it because, you guessed it, the employee contributed significantly to the gross revenue. So I'm willing to overlook it. It was the client's thought, but they weren't really even thinking about it that way. And so when we came together, we were able to talk and think through, what does this really mean from a culture standpoint at your firm? Because you've told me that you want culture to be X, and yet this behavior is going on, which is making culture Z. It's not X. So, from a leadership perspective, how do we move through the space of becoming the leader you want to be? Because it's not on a checklist, it's not an external thing. To become the leader you want to be, the leader that you were meant to be as a human being, it requires you to perform a bit of alchemy, to look inside and change the inside in conjunction with changing the outside.
I find it difficult to believe lawyers are willing to look inside themselves and change.
I will tell you, that is the heaviest lift that I have. And that's why people look at me and say, you coach lawyers? They're uncoachable. I don't coach all lawyers. No, I don't. Not every, I'm not the right flavor for every lawyer. The lawyers I coach, I call accomplished seekers. A recent client said this: I was at a coffee shop talking about you, John, my coach. And I had a colleague look at me almost with disgust. You are already so successful. Why in the world would you have a coach? Are you never satisfied? And my clients, no, that's not it. I told my colleague in the coffee shop, I said, I know that there's more for me to learn. There's a greater place for me to get to from a leadership perspective. He's working now and stepping into a leadership role in his firm. Look, it's 8 figures, multiple employees, all this stuff. And he recognizes that he wants to be different. He wants to step into that different space. He is an accomplished seeker. The world will say, you are a success. He knows that there's more to be out. There's more to be had. There's more to learn. Those are the folks that line up very well with me.
Sometime or from time to time, I'm asked on a pod, what would the 60-something Tom tell the 25-something Tom? And I said, nothing. There's nothing I needed to know when I was 25. In fact, I knew everything. So I wouldn't tell him anything because he wouldn't listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. John, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you if our listeners wanted to connect with you, find out any more information about your consulting practice or buy your book, what would be the best place or places for them to go?
Yeah, we'll start with the book. It's on Amazon. It's on Kindle. I would ask you, if you have a local bookstore, go to your local independent bookstore and ask them for it. They are able to get it as well. They may not stock it, but you can go and ask. I'm a big believer in supporting local bookstores. To find me, you can go to my website, and it's just my name with my middle initial. So it's johnrkormanik.com. I am on LinkedIn. You can find me there, johnrkormanik.com. Instagram, it's all the same handle. You can find me out there. And if you have any questions or something comes to your mind, you're like, I want to talk to John, please, you can get on my calendar on my website. I'd love to have a conversation with you.
John, I've thoroughly enjoyed this visit with you. I hope we can continue this conversation.
Same, Tom. Thank you so much.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet, every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network, available wherever you listen to podcasts.